So welcome back to Grounded Home of Mindfulness Meditation Self-Transformation. Today's video we're going to be diving a little bit deeper, a little bit of a more understanding on self-transformation and the keys to self-transformation and what self-transformation looks like. Now, for most of us, we are attached to suffering. And we all heard this, we all heard the Buddha say how we're attached to suffering, and suffering's the root of all evil and whatnot. But I'm going to paint a bit of a clearer picture on what suffering really is, because it's okay, the Buddha saying we're attached to suffering, but let's make this a little bit more clearer. Let's bring this to light, because by bringing it to light, then we can see it in ourselves. Because this is the key. This is one of the keys to self-transformation, is seeing this within us, seeing it arising. When we begin to see it, then we can begin to identify it. Until we have the ability to see and identify it, and we can't actually change nothing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how suffering comes about and why we're attached to suffering, because there is always reason why we attach ourselves to something. We don't attach ourselves to something for no reason. So I'm going to use a little bit of a demonstration. And obviously the majority of what we're attached to, and I would hazard a guess to say that 85 to 90% of our suffering comes out of our childhood. And suffering really is attachment to false identity, false beliefs, false associations. But it's important we understand why. Why do we attach to suffering? Why do we attach to false beliefs? Well, attaching to suffering is actually a very beautiful thing from a higher perspective. Now, the reason why I'm going to say it's a very beautiful thing, because it's the attachment to suffering that allows us to experience the transition, allows us to experience the contrast between suffering and awakening. Without suffering, there's no awakening. So suffering on one perspective is a very beautiful thing. And our childhood conditioning is a very beautiful thing. And again, it's kind of like one of them things where it makes us suffer, so it's not beautiful. But then at the same time, without the suffering, we can't acknowledge the beauty. So we kind of have to look at how everything works, everything balances itself out, it overlays. So it's in our childhood we begin these attachments to suffering. Now, what does an attachment to suffering look like, and how does it come about? Right, now say we're born into a world of separation, which we are. Most of us believe ourselves to be personal, these personal minds, these personal bodies having a personal experience. Not many of us are touched pure being, which is the connectedness amongst us all. And the reason for this separation is because of this conditioning. Now, as a really simple example, if you turn up in the world, pure clean consciousness, which is what everybody is. So you come into this world as automatic love. You come into this world as pure love. But then you come into a family, let's say mum and dad show you a lot of disapproval, towards you. And that disapproval, when mum and dad are showing disapproval, they're showing the disapproval of themselves but projecting it onto the child. So the child is feeling mum and dad's disapproval because this is something that's been going on for generations. So the child then feels mum and dad's disapproval. Because mum and dad are in the emotion of disapproval and they're projecting, that's creating an emotion in the child. And then the child is then interpreting the emotion and seeing that in that moment they're being pushed away. So the child now feels pushed away. The child now feels rejected. Now the child begins to personally, on a mental level, consciously look at the situation. They're feeling mum and dad's repelled. They're feeling pushed away by mum and dad. So then they're naturally feeling pushed away. We then begin to interpret the experience, and then we begin to add the identity of I feel rejected. Now, the reason we hold on to rejection, the reason we hold on to suffering is because it stops us being put into that position again. So if we're rejected as a child and then we actually identify with rejection, what does rejection do? It stops us coming forward. It stops us putting ourselves forward. So we hold the idea of rejection so as not to put ourselves forward. But the problem is, this is the problem, when we see it from a very young perspective, we're not able to see mum and dad's conditioning. We're taking it completely personally, and then this begins our separation. The idea of rejection then pulls us away. We pull ourselves away from coming forward, because this is how we stay safe. So suffering actually keeps us safe. You can't, on one level, as a child, it kept you safe. In your adult life, it's completely screwing and fucking your life over. which is why it's important we understand the subconscious mind and the understanding of the programmings. But what I wanted to convey in this video is that suffering keeps us safe on one level. In our childhood, it kept us safe from moving, from expressing, from showing up, from being who we are. But in our adult life, if we're still attached to these beliefs, then it's keeping us back. It's actually stopping us living our lives. So this is the opportunity, like understanding and identifying negative emotion, where these responses come from, why you feel rejected, going into rejection. When did I first feel rejection? Because if you understand rejection, it takes you back to that point where you began to close yourself off. And then that's when you have the choice. That's when you have the conscious choice. Do I want to keep living like this? Be with the feeling, acknowledge the feeling, understand the feeling, see where it come from, and then have the conscious choice to let it go. You have the conscious choice to hold. What you hold on to is your conscious choice. But if it's subconscious, you need to bring it to the conscious and then make that a conscious choice. Because if it's in the subconscious, you've already chose to hold on to it. You've already chose to program yourself like that. So suffering is a choice. And it served you at one point, but it doesn't serve you now in your adult life. And so make it conscious and choose to detach, choose to let go. Now there is an energetic charge that you've been accumulating by holding on to that, and that charge takes time to dissipate over time. You can't choose to let go of rejection. Yes, you can detach. In the moment of letting it go, you are detaching from it, but it still has a charge, and that charge takes time to dissolve. So you have the choice. You've always had the choice, but I'm telling you that suffering now doesn't serve you, and now if you're watching this video, you have the choice to let go of your suffering. Now what actually happens is when we let go of suffering, when we let go of rejection, when we no longer identify with rejection, what does it show? It shows up connection. When we let go of our attachments to suffering, we get to see what's on the other side. I am not actually rejection. I just held on to rejection. I believed in rejection because I took it on from my parent, because I took it on from the person that showed it to me. But it's not who I am. The moment I let it go, what do I get? I get connection. I get to taste my essence. I get to realize what I am. And so all suffering serves for the purpose of you tasting your divinity, you realizing what you are, you realizing your authenticity, you realizing that you're an absolute powerhouse and that you can create anything you wish to create in your life. There's content to be coming hard and fast. Go over to my YouTube channel where you can pick up other videos that are not necessarily on my Instagram. Go over to my Divine Union page where me and Lauren are doing a lot of stuff. But also keep an eye out for my self-transformation courses and the masterclasses that I'm actually going to be teaching of how we can free ourselves, of how to elevate consciousness, of how to be who we was truly meant to be, how to elevate and into how to shine. Till next one. Much love.